go above and beyond the headlines now with the lawyers of the 2016 vice presidential race rivals. Here in the studio, Attorney Vic Rodriguez representing former Senator Bongbong Marcos. And joining us on location in a little bit, Romulo Macalintal, the lawyer for the Vice President Leni Robredo. Good evening, gentlemen. But Attorney Vic, let's begin with you. All right, Bongbong Marcos was this close to the vice presidency, about 200,000 plus votes in May 2016, just after the elections. He is so convinced he won and he's out to prove it. Is that correct?
Tama po yun, Ma'am Pia. Good evening, and good evening to Attorney Romy. Good evening, magandang gabi po sa inyo. Yeah, hindi naman ho magfa-file si Senator Marcos ng kanyang election protest if we don't have good grounds to believe that he was cheated last 2016 election for the Vice President.
Okay, when you say cheated by how many votes? Do you have an idea? Because yung lamang niya, 200,000 plus. Lamang ni Leni Robredo sa kanya, 200,000 plus. But his position, your position is that he was cheated of how many votes? By
well, matatandaan ho natin, nung gabi ho nung May 9, ang lamang ho ni Senador Marcos ay humigit kumulang 1 million votes. And all of us here are familiar with election. So before you can overcome the 1 million votes, you have to start by the hundreds, by the thousand, by the 10,000, by the 100,000. Pero hindi ho yung isang iglap na bura yung 1 million. And that is what we are set to prove before the tribunal. That is why we filed the election protest. And after 2 years of waiting patiently, nagsimula na ho ngayong araw yung manual recount and judicial revision for the initially three pilot provinces.
The term, like you mentioned, judicial revision, in other words, a review of the votes.
Yeah, judicial revision because it is already the Supreme Court sitting as the Presidential Electoral Tribunal who's going to appreciate the evidence to be presented before them.
And of course, the Presidential Electoral Tribunal is the sole judge for all these contests related to the election returns. No?
Yes,
kasi ang canvas, yung certificate of canvas na kung tawagin, yun ang kumbaga responsibility ng Kongreso yon.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So ang
National
election
Board of Canvassers.
Yes, as NBOC. So ang election returns ang pinag-uusapan dito. Can you tell us first, very briefly, how you chose the three provinces, Camarines Sur, Negros Oriental, Iloilo?
We're looking at the whole contested areas at we've noticed na katangi-tangi napakataas nung number of undervotes sa tatlong probinsya, Camarines Sur, Negros Oriental, and Iloilo Province. And yung number of undervotes are more or less 290,000 votes. And ang lamang lang ho ni Mrs. Robredo base sa maling canvassing at maling tally ay 263,000 votes, 473 votes. At kami naniniwala, if not all, well, at least substantially, most of the 290 undervotes dito sa tatlong pangunahing probinsya ay boto ni Senator Marcos. And our basis, nakita ho namin doon sa ballot images na resulta ng decryption process that we've asked the court to do. Ang dami purong boto ni Senator Marcos na hindi binilang ng makina at doon linagay sa category of undervote.
Okay, ang daming boto, yung sinasabi niya maraming boto, hindi binilang nitong mga vote counting machines or VCMs noong 2016 in spite of the fact na may shade
Tama po yun.
yung oval beside his name.
Tama po yun. And that's what we are looking at, will be looking for the days to come. Ngayon po nagsimula na yung manual recount.
Okay. Hindi ba, Attorney Vic, I remember, prior to 2010, so syempre lahat ng eleksyon ay manual, doon talaga makita mo lahat ng milagro na lang na mangyayari. And everybody was saying, kapag naging automated ang elections, wala nang dayaan or the human interference will be at a very minimal level that there can be no possibility of any cheating. That doesn't convince you, right?
Personally, hindi ako sang-ayon doon, Ms. Pia, because ang position namin, especially now, part of the electoral reform advocacy of Senator Marcos, silipin natin, maybe we can go back to the manual counting at the precinct level. And then automated na lang yung transmission. So, pagkadating po yun, mawawala yung takot natin na may ballot switching, mayroong ballot
box snatching.
Oo, basta dito.
Or may dagdag bawas doon sa habang
po yun. Because the Constitution and the law on election are very, very clear. Ang sinasabi po doon, secrecy in voting. but transparency in counting, transparency in canvassing.
Yeah, in
Yun po
counting
yung nawala
meaning dun sa election precinct.
Sa precinct level pa lamang ho.
Oo. Walang transparency because it's only the vote counting machine that can see the count.
And then
what's
remember,
going
noong
on.
2016, ma'am, hindi pa rin pwedeng iuwi yung resibo na ilinuluwa ng makina just to prove kung tama yung binoto natin o hindi. Titingnan mo lang,
Tapos i-check mo kung tama.
hindi mo na ho
Pero
marirecord.
ang sabi kasi ng COMELEC, kaya daw hindi pinapauwi yung resibo, dahil baka yun ang gawin na basehan ng pagbabayad, pagtanggap ng bayad.
Yun na lang ho
ganun.
hindi ko maintindihan bakit takot na takot sila makahuli nung mga botante na nagbebenta ng boto. Hindi ba dapat yun ang interest nila?
Yeah.
Kung may magbebenta, di hulihin natin and let's prosecute them.
Alright, let's also speak to Attorney Romulo Macalintal, who is joining us live on location. Attorney Macalintal, thank you for being with us. Attorney Macalintal.
Magandang gabi, Pia, at kay Vic.
Magandang gabi po,
Hello,
sir.
hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. There's just a 2-second
Magandang gabi.
delay. Yes. Well, sir, let's begin with this. No? Why do you have to say that you will surrender your license as a lawyer kung matalo kayo sa kasong ito?
Kasi I'm very, very confident na hindi kami matatalo. Dahil sa yung mga sinasabi ni Attorney Vic, with due respect, na kung nagre-rely lamang sila doon sa mga undervotes, that is not a ground for an election protest. Kasi ang undervotes, ang ibig sabihin niyan, maaaring walang ibinoto yung mga botante o kulang ang pagkakagawa doon sa balota ng mga botante. At meron tayong tinatawag na overvotes na kung saan ang botante ay higit sa isa ang kanilang ibinoto. Maaaring 2 kandidato o 3 kandidato ang ibinoto. Kaya kung doon lamang nagre-rely si Mr. Vic Rodriguez sa mga undervotes or overvotes, they better forget their election protest because no protestant has ever won an election protest on the basis of an undervotes or overvotes. Even in the United States of America, we have this problem of overvotes and undervotes. Kaya hindi ho yun magiging basis ng anumang election protest.
Dahil ang makina, hindi po ibibilangin yung overvote. Kumbaga, if you're only supposed to vote for one VP, tapos ang binoto mo Robredo at si Marcos, talagang hindi iboboto yun. Pero talagang hindi bibilangin ng VCM.
Hindi iboboto yun.
Pero Attorney Macalintal, may sinasabi rin po si
Talagang
Attorney
hindi bibilangin yun.
Yes, may sinasabi po si Attorney Rodriguez kasi na halimbawa, merong boto o may shade doon sa oval sa tabi ng pangalan ni Bongbong Marcos, hindi pa rin binilang daw yon ng makina.
Hindi dahil sa hindi binilang ng makina, kundi may diferensya yung pagkakagawa ng balota ng botante. In other words, it was not an error by the machine, it was an error committed by the voter himself because the shading that he made on the ballot did not reach the shaded threshold required by the COMELEC.
What do you mean
In
by
the past
shaded
election,
threshold?
itong 2016 election, kasi you must shade the oval at least 25% of the oval. Kapag hindi naka-reach ng 25% ang shade mo, it will not be counted by the machine.
Alright, so
So
Attorney
that
Mac,
if you
yes.
look at the image of the ballot,
So, Attorney Mac,
makikita
if
mo
you're
doon,
saying-
meron siyang mark. But then, it would not be counted.
So, Attorney Mac, if you're saying that na siguro less than 25% yung pagka-shade ng botante dun sa oval sa tabi ng pangalan ni Bongbong Marcos at talagang hindi bibilangin ng makina yon, how do you know that? You were able to see these particular ballots, or is this something that we can see when the revision is going along?
Well, we have sample of these ballot images. This could be seen from the ballot images. Doon sa actual ballot, which is now being counted by the Presidential Electoral Tribunal, marami ngayon yung makikita na ito may tuldok lamang o may maliit na shade. So, hindi ito binilang ng PCOS machine. So, yun ang sinasabi nila na kini-claim nila. But it did not only happen in the case of Mr. Marcos. It also happened in the case of Robredo. So, pareho lang, mag-offsetting lang yan. And it did not only happen in this particular case, but even in other elections all over the country, there were instances where the voter did not properly fill up the ballot. Kaya nagkakaroon ng problema sa pagbibilang ng mga balota.
At hindi na nabilang nga ng vote counting machine. Hindi na po PICOS yung 2010. But anyway, well, Attorney Rodriguez, we're going to go to a break, no? But we're not going to let the both of you go. So, Attorney Mac, please stay put right there. Attorney Vic Rodriguez, a very brief rebuttal to what Attorney Macalintal is saying. Sinasabi niya kasi kaya hindi binilang daw yung mga boto para kay Bongo dahil baka less than 25% yung pagka-shade.
Nakita ko, Ma'am Pia, meron ho kayong hawak ng revisor's guide. Very clear doon. Yung magde-determine kung whether you've reached the threshold for the shading, hindi po tao, yung makina. So yung makina ho na nakita namin based on the ballot images doon sa decrypted, meron ho roon 3 ang binoto for Vice President. Pero meron nga ho yung binanggit namin na mahiwagang kahon. At yung mahiwagang kahon laging lumalabas beside the name of Mrs. Robredo. So kahit 3 binoto mo, binibilang kay Mrs. Robredo. For the Vice President naman, nakita rin namin, kahit isa lang ang binoto, Bongbong Marcos ang binoto dahil wala yung mahiwagang kahon, undervote yung kanya.
All right. Well, many questions that hopefully will be answered during this revision of votes during this electoral protest of the Vice President of Bongbong Marcos and Leni Robredo. An electoral tribunal has begun the tedious process of manually recounting the 2016 votes for Vice President. But this early, former Senator Bongbong Marcos reveals new alleged irregularities. Our senior correspondent Cecil Lardizabal reports.
Former Senator Bongbong Marcos wants to see for himself how the recount of the vice presidential votes by the Presidential Electoral Tribunal will go. Marcos's lawyers and older sister Ilocos Norte Governor Amy Marcos also show their support. Marcos reveals there are questionable ballots in the municipality of Bato in Camarines Sur, one of the 3 pilot provinces that Marcos filed in his protest. He says some ballots got wet and some have no audit log.
Sa ngayon pa lang, meron na rin kaming nakita, 4 na presinto sa bayan ng Bato, lahat ng balota, nung binuksan ng balota, lahat ng balota basa. So hindi magamit. Pangalawa, halos lahat, out of 42 precincts, 38 precincts walang audit log. Bakit importante yon? Dahil ang audit log ang ang record na kung anong oras nagbukas ang presinto, anong oras nagsaksak ng boto, anong oras nagsara yung presinto.
But at least the Marcoses are happy and optimistic that finally the recount has started after 2 years since the protest was filed. Marcos's legal counsel says the projected timeline of the recount is 108 days, and they are confident the result will be in their favor.
Confident po tayo na siya ang tunay na nanalong Vice President.
Outside the Supreme Court, you can see these die-hard supporters of Bongbong Marcos are all clad in red, and they vow to fight it out with a real Vice President until the vote counting finishes.
Maski walang nag-uutos po sa amin, bukal ang loob namin na pumunta dito kasi kailangan namin ipaglaban yung aming boto eh.
Makita mo talaga na maraming supporter si Bongbong Marcos na sa iba't ibang sulok ng mundo.
In the meantime, Bongbong says as of the moment he has no intention to run for public office as he intends to finish the recount. Governor Amy Marcos is not revealing the family's political plans just yet, despite speculations that she may be seeking a Senate post.
Wala pang maliwanag. Ang pinaka-importante sa pamilya ko talagang matuloy na itong protestang to.
Cecil Lardizabal, CNN Philippines.
Still with us live here in the set, Vic Rodriguez, Bongbong Marcos' lawyer, and on location, Romulo Macalintal, the lawyer for Vice President Leni Robredo. Attorney Rodriguez, let's go back to this, the revision that's happening at the Presidential Electoral Tribunal. Did you ask, kayo po ni Attorney Macalintal, did you ask that this be a transparent proceeding na pwedeng panoorin ng taong bayan, that it can be televised, for example?
Well, during one of the briefings, hililing po yun ng aming lead counsel na si Attorney George Garcia, but the PAT decided na they do it with such dignity befitting the stature of the tribunal as the Supreme Court. So, sinunod na lang ho namin.
Dignity? Bakit? Undignified ba? Pag
Hindi
may
naman, ma'am.
sinabi?
That's how they view it. Na we'll do it na wala ng fanfare, wala ng gulo sa loob. We'll do it as much as fast as they could. So siguro yun ho yung naging...
Well, pwede namang isang camera o dalawang camera tapos nobody inside
I'm one with
the
you
camera, di ba?
sa observation na hong yan.
Yeah, wala. I mean, people syempre want to know what's going on. But Attorney Macalintal, I wanted to ask you about that also. What does the Vice President and the rest of the legal team feel about this? Well, broadcasting it or
Well, we have no objection. We respect the decision of the Presidential Electoral Tribunal that the revision and recount should not be with any media coverage. No? So if the media would like to go there, they would only be waiting for us to make our own assessment of the recount proceedings. Pero yung mag-request sa kanila, it depends on the tribunal because we have no problem with that. With or without media coverage, we are very confident with the results of the recount of these ballots.
Attorney Macalintal, you were saying earlier that you're very confident that the Vice President will win this, that definitely hindi po kayo matatalo, and that's why you were saying na you're very willing to turn in your license as a lawyer, give it up if you lose.
Yeah.
If there is always that possibility that she will lose this, right? And that is something that you're also prepared
No,
for.
I don't
No?
see any possibility. I don't see any possibility, Pia, because judging from the results of past elections from 2010 up to the present, in our automated election, wala pang nanalo sa recount ng mga balota. Kasi laging nagtatali ang physical count at saka iyang mga PICOS count or machines count. Kaya I am very, very confident with that. And I would say, with due respect, there is no possibility that the Vice President will lose this election protest.
And there is no possibility that, for example, like Attorney Vic Rodriguez was saying earlier, that, for example, tatlo yung na-shade na pangalan pero ang binilang pa rin ng boto para kay Leni Robredo. Wala po tayong makikitang ganoon.
With due respect kay Vic, hindi, wala yun. At saka yung sinasabi niya kung mahiwagang kahon, wala po yun. Hindi po totoo yun. Baka naniniwala yung nanonood sa atin. Wala pong mahiwagang kahon. Ang nakikita ho sa ballot images ay square. The votes credited by the machines are placed inside a square to distinguish the votes which were not credited by the PICOS machine. Ang ibig ko sabihin, kung may tatlo halimbawang sinyay doon at isa'y nasa loob ng square, ang ibig sabihin, yung nasa loob ng square are the shades which reached the threshold of 25%. Yung labas doon sa mga squares na yun po ang hindi pumasok sa 25%. Kaya hindi ho totoo yung sinasabi ni Vic na mayroong mahiwagang kahon. Huwag po kayo maniniwala doon. Yan po lagi sinasabi nila, yan ang mga panlilinlang na ginagawa nila with due respect. Huwag po kayo maniniwala. Baka ang taong bayan maniwala. And I challenge Mr. Vic, patinayan mo sa taong bayan ngayon kung talaga mayroong mahiwagang kahon. Walang kahon ho doon. Siguro doon sa isang programang kwarta o kahon meron. Pero dito, walang kahon ang ballot images. And you can ask the lawyer of Mr. Marcos. Kasi yung talagang lawyer ni Mr. Marcos sa election matters ay si Mr. George Garcia at wala pong election lawyer na nagsasabi na mayroong mahiwagang kahon. Nakakatawa po yan na mapakinggan sa bagay na ito.
Well, we'll get to that rebuttal of Attorney Vic tungkol dun sa sinasabi niyang mahiwagang kahon na sinasabi po ninyo, na ini-insist po ninyo na dapat tanungin sa kanya. But anyway, Attorney Mac, I just wanted to ask you also dahil so what we have going on here, a revision, there is the revision committees that is formed by the Presidential Electoral Tribunal. These are the justices of the Supreme Court sitting as members of the PET. But there is that political scenario swirling around us, swirling around this PET and swirling around this electoral protest. You have President Duterte, who is very good friends, is very open towards former Senator Bongbong Marcos. Does this in any way affect the case, or the way, at least at the very least, perceptions, for example?
We never have any inkling of such scenario. We trust our justices of the Supreme Court. We trust their integrity and competence in resolving this matter. Gusto ko lang mag-comment doon sa sinabi ni Mr. Marcos kanina na may nawawala daw ng mga audit logs, na 38 ballot boxes did not contain the audit logs. Iyan again ay isang katunayan na hindi alam ni Mr. Marcos ang sinasabi niya tungkol sa eleksyon. Kasi yung audit logs, hindi po inilalagay sa ballot boxes. Iyang audit logs na yan, iniiwan po yan sa election officer. Kung sakali mang may dalawa silang nakita, nagkamali yung teacher na ilagay yung audit logs na yon. Kahit magtanong po kayo ngayon sa COMELEC, kumuha kayo ng certification sa COMELEC, ay ang audit logs pong yan ay hindi iniiwanan. Kaya Mr. Marcos, wag po kayong, I would suggest, do not immediately jump into conclusion na nagkaroon ng dayaan dahil sa wala yung audit logs doon. Nakawawa ang taong bayan. And I want to clarify na hindi po iniiwanan yan. As an election lawyer, na alam namin ang trabaho namin, wala pong audit logs na iniiwan.
Alright.
Under the instruction nung sa automated election, these are all duly noted by the election officers. Kung sakaling may naiwan sa isa o dalawa, ito po'y pagkakamali lamang ng teacher.
Okay.
Ang iniiwan lamang sa ballot box ay yung minutes of voting at yung mga balota na ginamit.
Alright, Attorney Makalintal, wala na rin po tayong oras. So I'm going to say thank you to you and say thank you also to Attorney Vic. But you have
Salamat, Pia. Salamat, Vic. Salamat.
Yes. You have 45 seconds to explain yung audit logs na sinabi nga ng inyong kliyente kanina na nawawala raw. At the same time, meron daw mga balota sa 4 na ballot boxes na nabasa. Of course, there is that. I mean, these ballot boxes were in the possession of the local election officers, right?
Mindful of the rule on sub judice, which the court reminded us, I would rather make a factual reporting of the discoveries made today, Ms. Pia. Number one, 39 out of 40 clustered precincts, nawawala po yung audit logs. Wala po, may missing. Yung audit logs, yun po yung parang black box ng eroplano. Naka-record po doon lahat ng nangyari before the election, lahat ng nangyari during the election, and immediately after.
Na sinasabi naman po ni Atty. Makalintal na hindi naman talaga dapat nilalagay sa
I do not know if he is lawyering for Mrs. Robredo or if he is lawyering for the COMELEC.
Okay.
And yung isa pong factual reporting, yung pong nakitang basang mga balota. 2 years na po, Ms. Pia, itong election protest si Senator Marcos. Kung nabasa po ito noong 2016, siguro naman by now, magdadalawang taon na natuyo na ho yung mga balota. Basa ho
Unfair.
All right. Well, we're going to have to say thank you to our guests, Attorney Romulo Makalintal.
I just want to have one.
Yes, sir. Actually, we need to wrap up right now, but I think we can give you.
I want to comment
10
on that
seconds.
wet ballots.
Yeah.
I want to comment on that wet ballots. Kasi yung wet ballots, hindi ho yan palatandaan ng dayaan. Kasi nung kinuha yung mga balota yan, umuulan. Bagyo doon sa lugar na yon. At lahat halos yan ay binababasa, ay naiiwan sa labas. Kaya sa lahat ng probinsya, lagi nangyayari yung wet ballots. Kaya nga mayroong ballot image para kung sakaling basa ang balota, babalik tayo sa ballot images.
Kaya ang hinihintay na lang ng
kung
tao
ganyan lamang ang uri ng protesta natin ito, wala pong mangyayari dyan.
Alright, thank you, Attorney Makalintal. Kaya hinihintay ng tao yung mangyayari ngayon dito sa revision of votes, dito sa electoral protest na ito. Maraming salamat to our guests. Attorney Makalintal, thank you, sir. And Attorney Vic Rodriguez,
ma'am.
thank you.